If it's a bigger trigger or you're more dysregulated, more anxious, sometimes breathing doesn't feel accessible. So you need to move first. You need to walk away from the situation, from the email, from the meeting, from the conversation with your kids or your partner. Walk away and get that energy moving. Then come back and do your belly breathing. Then come back and do that next step. And you're going to start to feel yourself calm down. Hey, I'm Brooke Jean, therapist, recovering perfectionist, and struggling working mom on a mission to normalize normal. If you're an overwhelmed, high-achieving, and secretly anxious mama, struggling to balance it all and on the brink of burnout, you are in the right place. Here is where we talk about hard things like balancing work and family life, mental health, and how to navigate life-altering transitions. Nothing is too taboo here. In my conversations, I'll teach you how to let go of who you think you're supposed to be in order to create the life you've always wanted. Get ready to embrace your messy, shed the shoulds, and find freedom through a life unperfected. This is the Unperfected Pod. Well, welcome back to the Unperfected Pod, where we normalize normal and find freedom through a life unperfected. Hello, everybody. Brooke Jean here, back behind the scenes, excited to share more real-life stories around what it's like to be a struggling working mama. And I wanted to kick off today with just a little background of what my morning has looked like. So, it is currently -1 degrees here in a suburb right outside of Denver, Colorado, which is freezing for us. I know the reputation around Colorado is that it's really cold and snowy all the time, but that's actually not how it really is. Normally, it snows and it melts the next day. So anyways, we got a notification late last night that my daughter's school was going to be on a 1-hour delay. So as you can imagine, that changes our morning routine. And my daughter hasn't been feeling well, so she slept in the bed with my partner. I slept in the spare bedroom. So I'm sure they didn't get awesome sleep last night. I didn't get awesome sleep last night. And we were just kind of all running through our morning because we weren't on our normal morning routine, which typically my husband and I divide and conquer. So there's certain mornings that I get up and get our daughter ready for school and take her. And then there's other mornings that he does. We're really good at splitting that workload and dividing and conquering. But when we get off our normal routine, we don't really have time to chat about it. Let's just say the shit show ensues. And so I do this live presentation for a company every Thursday at 8:30 in the morning. That requires a lot of me, right? I bring my best. It's like a live coaching. We call it a weekly wellness live. It starts at 8:30 and it's 8:17 and my daughter comes down because normally I do her hair for school and she needs me to do it, but she's not dressed. And one thing leads to another, and it's now we're in tears and I'm running behind and my partner's flustered and I'm frustrated, and that's how the morning started. So we got her to school. I got on my live on time and I just ate 6 meat sticks for breakfast. So welcome to the morning of a working mom. How's your morning been going? Always something fun around here. Anyways, I am so ready to address and talk about and teach you about all things anxiety today. Okay, maybe not all things. Anxiety is such a big topic. I most certainly will address it on several episodes in several different ways, but it is something that I see so many of you struggling with. And so today we're going to talk about anxiety. We're going to talk about what anxiety is, that it presents differently for other people. It presents differently. We're going to talk about what anxiety is and how it presents differently for each of us. We are going to talk about the nervous system and how important regulating the nervous system is to our overall well-being and to working through and managing anxiety. And then I'm going to give you a couple real tangible therapeutic tips and techniques to help you manage that anxiety. And so if you are one of those mamas who always has a pit in her stomach because of anxiety or racing thoughts, this one is for you. So let's go ahead and get started. One of the things that I've noticed is that if we have a baseline of anxiety before becoming a mother, it only amplifies during pregnancy or after becoming a mother. Well, I guess you become a mother once you're pregnant. You guys know what I mean, okay? Or if you already had a baseline of anxiety, a higher baseline of anxiety, it still amplifies. In other words, becoming a mother absolutely triggers anxiety. And here's why. Because there's so much transition and unknown. Becoming a mother is by far one of the biggest transitions that we will ever go through in our lifetime. And I don't feel like it's talked about enough. It changes us at every single freaking level, doesn't it? It changes our mind, right? Talk about mom brain. I still have like 30% of my vocabulary that I just never was able to retrieve again. I cannot tell you how many times I'm like stuck in a thought, in a concept, and I just can't complete it because I can't find the words. And I'm like, listen, it's gone, folks. She's not there anymore. It changes us emotionally. Holy beep. Let's talk hormones, right? The emotions are just unbelievable. And it certainly changes us physically. Okay. And it also, I believe it changes us energetically and spiritually too. So in other words, there isn't a single part of us that doesn't change in becoming a mother. And our brains and bodies don't love change because we can no longer predict future outcomes. So the brain's only job is to keep you safe and to use as little energy in the process as possible. And when we're going through a big transition or a big change and your brain can't see through the other side of how it's going to be and how we're going to feel and what our routine is going to be and how work is going to be effective and how's this going to affect my marriage, or I'm going to be a single parent, what's that going to look like? So many questions emerge. And the brain has no idea. And when it can't control future outcomes, it starts to panic. It starts to freak out a little bit. And then the pregnancy brings all the changes. And then the delivery brings all the changes. And then the newborn. Oh my gosh, how scary is being sent home from the hospital with a newborn. Like, you know what to do with it, right? Or even if you have a home birth, being left at home with your newborn. There's so much unknown, and so many parts of us have been changed, and we're not in a new normal yet. I don't know if we're ever going to be in a full new normal, because once that new normal starts to feel like it's grounding, there's another new slew of changes that come your way as a parent, as a mother. And so this might be one of the reasons why we suffer with anxiety. There's so much changing and we don't have any control over it. And the brain just wants to be able to predict the future outcome so it can keep us safe. And so anxiety, from where I'm standing, is really a brain and body response to many different things. I just listed all of the changes. Well, not all of them, but I listed some changes that we go through in becoming a mother. But it's also a brain and body response to stimuli that's coming in throughout our days that maybe we are perceiving as a threat, which, by the way, right now we have so many things that are coming through our news and our social media feed that trigger us because they don't seem safe. We have plenty to worry about, is what I'll say. And so anxiety is a brain and body response to things that our brain and body has perceived as a threat, whether it's a mild threat or a serious and severe threat. Anxiety is a response to a repressed emotion. So anxiety itself is not its own emotion. It's a response to whatever you're stuffing in your brain and body, any unresolved, unprocessed emotion or experience or trauma can present as anxiety. And so here's a couple of different ways that it might be presenting for you. I want to say this really clear. Anxiety presents differently for different people. It's not a one size fits all. So anxiety might be very thought-based for you. It might be ruminating. It might be living in worst case scenario. It might be really rapid thoughts where you feel like your brain just can't slow down. It might be seeing the worst in yourself and being constantly critical of yourself. It might be obsessively fixating on something and thinking it over and over and over and over and over again. Okay? So anxiety might be showing up in your brain, in your mind. Anxiety also is felt in the body. So anxiety might be presenting for you as a nervousness in your belly, a nausea, gut issues, a tightness in your chest, a rapid heartbeat, like a thumping happening in your chest, tightness in your shoulders, random body aches and pains. Okay, and so anxiety presents differently for different people. There's a wide range of normal, just like anything else. But anxiety is really a brain and body response to something, whether that something is something outside of our control, a perceived threat, or this one is not talked about as much as the others, but it's definitely something that it's definitely something that's relative for me in my life. So if you're in a bad relationship or the wrong work setting, or you're engaging in a habit or a pattern that's destructive or self-sabotaging or no longer serving you, you're going to have anxiety around some things that maybe we need to give a little attention to. Maybe need some examination. Is this really the right thing for me? Sometimes our anxiety is saying, red flag, this isn't for you. There's a different path for you. And so no matter where you are on the spectrum of anxiety, no matter how it presents for you, we have to start by just getting curious about it without judgment, without criticism, without psychoanalyzing the crap out of ourselves. Just get curious. What is my anxiety drawing my attention to? What's happening in my brain? What's happening in my body? When do I feel more anxious versus more grounded and calm? When do I feel it spike and peak? What's happening around me? What context am I in? How am I taking care of myself or not taking care of myself? Right? So if you're not getting good sleep, you're going to be vulnerable to more anxiety. If you're drinking too much, you're going to be vulnerable to anxiety. If you're not getting proper nutrition, if you're overstimulated, right? If we're not taking good care of ourselves, we're going to be even more vulnerable. So we have to start with just like, what's up for me? What's going on for me with this anxiety? No shame, just curiosity and compassion. And so when we start to work with anxiety, everything begins and ends with awareness. We cannot work on what we're not aware of. We cannot change what we're unaware of. And that's why I'm starting here. What is going on in your brain and body? How does anxiety present to you? Because once you build awareness, then you can start to do something about it. But I want to talk about the nervous system. This is a really important topic right now. I heard this quote the other day, and I don't remember who said it. I've heard, I think, different variations of it from different people, and I've even heard it come out of my mouth when working with clients in different ways, but you cannot mindset shift your way out of a dysregulated nervous system. So a lot of times when we are frozen or paralyzed or really worked up, maybe even in panic with anxiety, we try to talk our way out of it. And if you're like me, when you're in a panic state, listen, those tools are not accessible to me. I can't think my way out of that. The thoughts I'm having are not helpful, right? The thoughts I'm having are not helpful. Here's why. When we perceive a threat, first of all, it comes in through our receptors. The biggest receptor we have is our eyeballs and our retina. So information comes through our receptors. It travels to our amygdala, which is this almond-shaped part of our brain that then determines what level of threat is this stimuli. So when I'm talking stimuli, guys, I'm talking just that nasty email that just came through from your coworker. I'm talking that asshole that cut you off on the way to work. I'm talking the straight news and how it's gloom and doom and the world is falling apart. I'm talking COVID updates. I'm talking letter from school. I'm talking the tone your partner had with you this morning. Okay? All stimuli. It comes in through our receptors, and then that amygdala in our brain determines the level of threat and determines what response is needed in terms of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And once it determines the level of threat and the type of response we need, it floods our brain and bodies, our nervous system, with the appropriate hormone, which is usually adrenaline and cortisol. You probably know exactly what I'm talking about and how that feels. Because that cortisol and adrenaline, which is felt in the body, it's experienced as a fight, flight, or freeze response. It's experienced as irritation, agitation, rage, anger, frozen, stuck, crying, running, attacking, defending, right? It's felt like that, but it's due to this flood of hormones that you have running through your nervous system. So once that amygdala has determined a threat, it signals to the brain and body what kind of response we're going to need, floods us with adrenaline and cortisol, and next thing we know, we're hosting that in our body, and it's experienced as anxiety. And so once we're in that state, which is a dysregulated nervous system, once we're in that state, friends, guess what happens? That rational thinking brain, that executive functioning part of your brain, that's the newest part of your brain. It's in the front. It's called the prefrontal cortex. It's the executive functioning, rational, analyzing, synthesizing data part of our brain. That puppy goes offline. Totally inaccessible. Let me give you a little example to illustrate how this works in real life. You're in a fight with your partner. You're in an argument. They tell you to calm down. You want to tell me what happens when your partner tells you to calm down when you're already enraged? That rage just levels the F up, doesn't it? There is no calming down, honey. If that was accessible, we'd all always be calming down. The reason why you can't calm down in that moment is not because you're crazy. It's not because you're psycho. It's not because you don't live consciously. It's because the rational brain is offline. You're in a primitive survival body response. So what we need to do instead is step away and regulate our nervous system. Okay? So the stimuli comes in through our receptors. The amygdala determines the level of threat, floods our nervous system with adrenaline and cortisol. We experience that as some level of anxiety, some level of survival response. This is not when we can think our way out of whatever loop we're in. This is not when we can just force ourselves to calm down. This is not when we need mindset work and affirmations. We have to tend to our physical bodies. We have to regulate our nervous system first. Then the rational brain will come back online and we can do the mindset work. We can figure out what we need. So how do we regulate our nervous system? So there's something called the vagus nerve. You may have heard of it. It's the biggest nerve in the body that connects the brain through the body. So it connects to the organs, right? So the lungs, it's connected to your gut and your digestion, everything. The brain and body are connected. It's not just a spiritual concept anymore. Now we have science to back it up. Okay? So if you're feeling something in your gut, like a nervousness, there's something happening in your brain. If you're feeling a bunch of racing thoughts, there's something happening in your body. They are one, they are connected because of this vagus nerve. And so what we want to do is we want to take care of that vagus nerve. We want to tend to that vagus nerve because a lot of us have an unhealthy vagus nerve. So this work is derived from the polyvagal theory. So if you want to learn more about it, there's podcasts on the polyvagal theory. There's books on the polyvagal theory. There's a ton of information. Maybe I'll even interview an expert on it. But what we need to know right now is that when we're anxious, we need to regulate our nervous system. And if we want to regulate our nervous system, let's tend to that vagus nerve. So if that vagus nerve runs from our brain down to our gut, what we want to do is send it some breath. The most powerful tools and techniques that I can share with you to help you regulate your nervous system are breath work and movement. So if you're straight up in a trigger and you notice that your anxiety has increased, maybe even spiked, honey, the first thing we need to do is notice it, right? Again, everything begins and ends with awareness. We need to notice that's happening in our brain or body. Whichever cue it gives you first is perfectly fine. There's no right or wrong way to do it. You just know, oh shit, I'm in an anxious state. Then you either physically move your body, step away from the computer. If you feel really frozen, roll onto the ground and start rolling around and start stretching. Put on your favorite Beyonce song and start shaking and dancing. Go for a walk around the block. Bonus, put in some binaural or bilateral music. The binaural and the bilateral music forces both parts of your brain, both hemispheres, to communicate. And when those two hemispheres are in communication, you release calming hormones through the brain and body. Also, when both parts of your brain communicate, it allows us deeper access into our brain. So it helps with nervous system regulation, but I also love the bilateral and binaural music for work and studying and processing because you get deeper into the brain, where your creativity lies, where your regulating principles lie, where just parts of your brain that you don't normally access because they're turned off thanks to anxiety. You open those up. But the first thing you got to do is shift your energy. If you're driving, just start shaking your hands like this, right? Just moving that anxiety through you. Here's the tip, my loves. Emotion needs to be in motion, especially anxiety and anger. Those two experiences need to be in motion. So you start moving your body to shift that energy, to get that energy in motion, and then you begin to breathe. So often when we become anxious, we cut off our breath. We have short breath. We have fast, rapid heart rate. So we want to start by slowing down and noticing our breath. Doing it right here, right now. I noticed that I was actually shortening my breath because I was getting excited about this information I'm sharing with you. And so what you want to do it right now with me. Start to slow down your breath, elongating your inhales through the nose, maybe pausing for a second or two at the top, and open mouth exhale to release. Releasing that fire, baby. Inhaling through the nose, pausing at the top, open mouth exhale to release. Here's what's happening. You are inhaling deep enough where you want to feel, let me stand up here. You want to feel your belly and your diaphragm expand. Okay? You want to inhale long enough that that breath gets into your belly and expands it. Because that tickles the bottom of your vagus nerve, which then sends a message to your brain that all is well, all is cool, all is calm. And then you release hormones that are calming and relaxing and grounding and resourcing. Okay? So people don't understand the power of breath work. It is a game changer because it's free and it's always available. It's free and it's always available. And it takes 1 minute, you guys. 1 minute of belly breathing will absolutely help you regulate that nervous system. Now, if you're just a little bit dysregulated, you might start with the belly breath. So if you're in the middle of work and an email comes through and it got you a little emotionally hooked, a little triggered, if you will, maybe right then and there, you go into a minute of belly breathing, inhaling through the nose to expand the belly. Maybe you even put one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly. When you breathe in, you want to feel that hand on the belly expand. You breathe out, open mouth. Maybe you go right into that. That could help you in that moment. But if it's a bigger trigger or you're more dysregulated, more anxious, sometimes breathing doesn't feel accessible. So you need to move first. You need to walk away from the situation. from the email, from the meeting, from the conversation with your kids or your partner. Walk away and get that energy moving. Then come back and do your belly breathing. Then come back and do that next step. And you're going to start to feel yourself calm down. So it doesn't matter what type of anxiety you're experiencing or what symptoms are presenting with your anxiety or even what caused your damn anxiety. Start moving it through your body and breathing, my loves. These are simple, available techniques that will change your well-being on a daily basis. So I want to offer you another tip, tool, technique to put in your tool belt. It's called the mini pause. Of course, as a busy working mom, or even as a stay-at-home mom, gosh, I know how busy you guys are too. Are you effing kidding me? A lot of times I hear, Brooke, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time to breathe. I don't have time to meditate. I don't have time to go on a walk. There's always someone needing me. We're going to get to that in a later episode, but I understand. I can relate to that feeling. So we have to work these self-care techniques into what you're already doing. We're going to talk about how to clear space, how to claim space, because that is possible. But with where we are right now in this journey together, I understand you probably don't feel like you have time, but you're still going to the bathroom, you're still taking a shower, you're still driving your kids to school, you're still coming home and opening the garage door, you're still driving to work, you're still going to the bathroom throughout your day. There are things that you're doing throughout your day that what I want you to do is layer in a new healthy habit that's going to help you ground and regulate your nervous system. The mini pause. So in the morning, the first thing you go to the bathroom, when you sit your fanny down, I want you to notice your breath and I want you to slow down your breath and I want you to take a couple deep and juicy breaths right then and there. Before you even start your day, you could have had a sip of self-care, okay? When you go to make your coffee and you go to put your hand on the coffee maker, I want you to pause right there and I want you to take a deep inhale and exhale. When you get your kids loaded up into the car and you're getting ready to take them to school and it's just a total dysregulating and overstimulating shit show in your minivan or whatever you drive. No shade to minivans, but whatever. You guys know that feeling. It is just like a lot of stimulation. I want you to put both hands on your steering wheel, even with the chaos ensuing, and I want you to take 3 belly breaths at that moment. You get the kids to where they're going. You come back to your home. As you go to open the door, whether it's the garage door, the front door, when your hand hits that doorknob or that whatever, another mini pause. When you go to the bathroom throughout the day, mini pause. When you get back in the car to go pick the kids up from school or to walk to the bus station, mini pause. Do you see where I'm going here? I'm not asking for more time. I'm asking you to use your time more wisely. There is always time for breath. You're already breathing. We're just going to change the quality of that breath. And in doing so, you're going to make that vagus nerve more healthy. You're going to regulate that nervous system. That's going to keep your rational brain online so you can handle things throughout your day. So you can respond in alignment with who you are. So you can formulate an intelligent sentence. Because let me tell you this, when you can't formulate an intelligent sentence, which happens at least once a day for me, it's because your rational brain is not online. Your nervous system is not regulated. It's not because you're stupid, honey. So take care of yourself. Regulate your nervous system. Move your body and breathe. Just start with that. Layer it into the things that you're already doing. And do it for 30 days and let me know how things are starting to change for you. This little micro movement over time is going to have marginal gains. Okay? I promise you that. So here's then what we do. Okay? So we understand that anxiety is a brain and body response to stimuli or trying to get our attention to something that's just off and not right. It's also when we're covering up other emotions. Okay, so if we're shoving down anger, if we're shoving down grief, if we're shoving down overwhelm, if we're shoving down sadness, it's going to bubble up as anxiety. But what we want to do is start with regulating that nervous system first so our full brain can be online, so then we can do the mindset work. And here's the mindset work. You've done your pre-work. Your nervous system is more regulated. Let's be honest, it's never like perfectly. Unless you're in a deep meditation or, I don't know, out in nature, which we do need those things too. But the brain is back online. This is when we check in and say, what was I just telling myself? So what a lot of people don't understand is that our thoughts are releasing these hormones, whether it's the cortisol and adrenaline that's felt or experienced as anxiety, or serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins that are felt as calm or joy or excitement. Our thoughts are releasing these hormones that then we experience as emotion in the body. So you might ask yourself, what was I just thinking? What was I just stewing on? What was I just analyzing or preparing for? What was I just worried about? And again, please, 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 mamas, meet yourself with gentle kindness and compassion. You do not get to be snarky to yourself and be like, oh, here I go thinking scary thoughts again. Or of course, my mind is going to go to worst case scenario. Stop it. Stop shaming yourself. We cannot control the thoughts we have, okay? We have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. It's said that 80% of them are negative and untruthful, and 80% of those are repetitive. So we are all walking around in shitty thoughts. It's not just you. There's not something inherently wrong with you. You're not crazy. Okay, we don't know exactly where our thoughts come from, but we can become an observer of our thoughts instead of assigning truth to them or thinking that we are our thoughts. Okay, so you're having the negative thought. The negative thought is creating the anxiety. You just want to notice it without judgment. Well, I was just worrying about how school's going to go for my kiddo today. I was just worrying about what's going on in my son's relationship. I was just worrying about X, Y, and Z. Okay. Is that thought true and helpful? What evidence do I have that thought is true and helpful? What evidence do I have that it's going to be a bad day for my daughter, or my son's relationship is in struggles, or this, my boss is going to come at me, or this proposal isn't going to work out? What evidence do I have? Most of the time we don't have any evidence. Our brain is just trying to keep us safe and predict future outcomes and tell us where we fall short so we can get our butt in line to be safe and socially accepted. But you want to ask yourself, like, what was I just thinking? And are those thoughts true? And are they helpful? From there, I like to ask myself, how am I really feeling? Now this one, my friends, this is more of an advanced skill, I would say. So many of us have cut ties with our bodies. We've been at war with our bodies, so we don't freaking know how we feel, okay? We're not getting the signals. We've been ignoring our body signals since 1997. Am I right? So if you're one of those people that when you go to ask yourself, how do I feel? And you don't know and you get frustrated, can I just normalize that for you? That just means that you have a little bit of repairing to do with your body. We've shut off the channels of communication, and we're going to slowly rebuild the trust with ourselves to open those back up. And we're going to do this by continually checking in, turning our attention inward, sitting with ourselves in stillness, or checking in on a walk and asking ourselves how we feel. And over time, we're going to rebuild that rapport with our bodies, and our bodies will start to give us signals. But we want to ask ourselves, how am I actually feeling? Because like I said earlier, a lot of times anxiety is a cover-up for other emotions that we're repressing. Maybe I'm actually feeling sadness or rejection or loneliness. This is one that so many of us mamas are suffering. Gosh, why is it so lonely being a parent when we are constantly surrounded by individuals? Because loneliness isn't about socialization. Loneliness is about feeling like no one really deeply understands you. And going back to all those changes that we're going through, we don't feel like people deeply understand us because you don't know what it's like if you're not in it. And your experience of it could be different from my experience. So by nature, motherhood is extraordinarily lonely. Let's name that shit out loud. But what is the feeling underneath? Maybe it's rage and anger. That because good girls don't have big emotions like that, we've just been pushing down and pushing down. Maybe it's a dream or a desire that you've been ignoring. Maybe it's a change that you need to make, but you've stuffed it down because you don't think that you can or should or that you deserve it. But we just want to get curious. What is under the hood? What is behind the curtain? And meeting that with kindness, compassion, grace, and space. And then you need to ask yourself, what do I actually need in this moment? And what you'll notice is all too often, it's such a basic human core need, like I need rest, I need play, I need nourishment, water and food, I need nature, I need a hug, I need to know it's going to be okay. And here's where you do that immediately for yourself like you would do for your kids. Because doing that is going to start to heal you on a level you don't even realize. So when we regulate our nervous system, we start to check in with ourselves and ask ourselves some questions. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're in the middle of a damn presentation and you started belly breathing to get your brain back online, now's not the time that you're going to be doing this soul searching. I get that. It's later on your drive home that you're going to check in, right? It might not be in that very moment, but at some point soon, you're going to go, what was I thinking? Like, what thoughts was I having before that anxiety really spiked? Were those thoughts true and were they helpful? What was I actually feeling underneath that? And what do I need in this very moment? What do I need in this very moment? Mamas, when we begin to tend to our basic needs like that, we not only heal our inner child, but our brain is always recording what we're saying to ourselves as if it's true. So when you start to check in and take care of yourself, you're teaching your brain and body to start taking care of yourself. And it will start to do that more organically over time, not to mention energetically. You send a different signal out into the universe energetically when you start tending to your own needs, because you're saying to yourself and the world and the universe that you effing matter, and you do. Stop putting yourself last. Check in. Okay, this work is powerful and you deserve it. So just to recap, I know we've talked about a lot and we're really just scratching the surface when it comes to anxiety. But anxiety is a brain and body response. And the first thing that we've got to do is regulate that nervous system. We cannot mindset shift our way out of a dysregulated nervous system. So if you have told yourself, I need to calm down, I just need to slow down my thoughts, I just need to not worry about this, that isn't working because A, it's not helpful, it's shaming, and B, that's not actually what's happening in your brain and body. So if you've been trying to tell yourself, oh, just stop worrying, and it's not working, and then you're feeling like something is deeply wrong with you, it's not. It's just, that's not the method. Okay, we need to regulate our nervous system first. And if we're really dysregulated, we start with movement. We start with shifting that anxiety. We step away from the computer or the meeting or our partner or our kids. We start to shake or dance or walk or stretch or roll around. No shit, whatever's available to you. Nothing is too ridiculous here, okay? I shake, I dance, I do all sorts of shit. Listen, I'm trying to get this energy out of my nervous system. I don't care how silly it looks. Then we start making sure that we're getting really deep inhales and exhales. The belly breathing is my go-to because it's just a deep inhale through the nose until you feel that belly expand and then an open mouth exhale. You do that for a minute. You're going to start to feel some calming and grounding hormones release through your brain and body. You're going to come back into your body. You're going to come back to earth. From there, your rational brain is going to come online, and that's when we can determine steps forward. That's when we can determine what we need to do next. That's where we do the mindset work. That's where we check in and find out what were the thoughts that I was having before that anxiety came through. And were those thoughts true and helpful? What was I actually feeling in that moment? And most importantly, what do I need right now? And then you got to do the damn thing, sister. You got to do the damn thing. You got to treat yourself the way you would your kids. You got to take care of your basic needs. You know, when we start to regulate our nervous system and manage our anxiety so it's not managing us, we will have so much more energy for the things that matter. Hosting anxiety in your brain and body is a full-time job, mama. So if you are feeling so bone tired and fatigued and also anxious, it's because it's a full-time job to host that anxiety. So if you start with just breathing on a regular basis or moving on a regular basis or checking in on a regular basis, that little shift is going to clear an opening for you. It's going to clear an opening energetically for you. It's going to be a little less taxing on your system. You know, anxiety really wears and tears on every other organ in our body and our immune system, right? And so my goal is to help you do less so you can pour more into the things that make you feel whole, that make you feel healthy, that make you feel like you, that matter to you in the world. And this anxiety, it's taken up too much space. And so I hope that you can take one of these little tips that I shared with you today, put it into your back pocket, play with it for the next 30 days, and see where it takes you. And I want to know what your questions are around anxiety. So if you haven't already, my friends, join me in my private Facebook group. It's called Mommy's Mental Health Matters. It's where we keep the conversation going after the podcast episodes. Ask your question in there, and I will be showing up in there to answer it, or I might even turn it into a topic on the podcast. There's a lot more that I want to say about anxiety, but I first want to normalize that there's a wide range of normal when it comes to anxiety. It's a brain and body response, and it's got to start with regulating that nervous system. But join us there to keep the conversation going and also to give us updates. How is the belly breathing going? When are you the most triggered with your anxiety? What's happening? How can we continue to support each other? If you've made it this far, thank you so much for investing in yourself in this way today. I hope this serves you in such meaningful ways. I will be back same time next week. Have a beautiful day. Thank you so much for listening to the Unperfected Pod. I hope this episode helped you feel a little less alone and a little more inspired to be you. If you like what we're doing here, I would so appreciate that you subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. If you do, share the episode on Instagram and tag me at Brooke Jean Unperfected to enter to win a 1-to-1 laser coaching session. Also, feel free to join me in my private Facebook community, Mommy's Mental Health Matters, where we continue the conversation. Thanks again for being here, and see you in next week's episode.